We are here. It is Seahawks Weekly, and Paul Moyer, Dave Wyman, and we are joined now. Yes, it's given up for Luke Willson, third-year tight end, drafted out of Rice University, en route from Canada.
Year 3 on the show.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, year 3 on the show.
I think that we've all improved and grown over these 3 years.
My hair has grown, that's for sure.
That is true. It is true.
Danny has not grown.
I have not grown. I've grown wider, and I'm going to grow a little wider with the legendary donuts that I've been eyeing right here in the front.
They look awesome.
Yeah, they do. They do look really good.
Yeah.
You're here 3 days, 4 days away from the start of the regular season. How's it feel?
It feels pretty good. I was seeing if you're right there. I'll give you 3 days. 4.
It's 4, not really.
Yeah.
3 days.
But we're fired up. It's one of those things where you go through camp and it's great to get your football back, but it's kind of nice to finally be game planning. We were talking earlier, Dave, about we've got a team we're going after, how we're going to attack it, and just getting into the rhythm of a normal yearly schedule has been kind of cool.
Hey, Luke, talk about your relationship with Jimmy Graham. Because a few years ago when he came in here, everybody hated him, right?
That's how it is, though. You always dislike guys that are the best players on their team.
Yeah.
Just from a competitive standpoint. But the cool thing about Jimmy is, obviously he's phenomenally talented, but his work ethic and just his personality in the locker room is second to none. So to have a guy that's that talented come in, work as hard as he does, have the attitude and approach that he does is it's pretty amazing.
Well, it's kind of weird though, because that whole Irvin thing. Remember, like Irvin kicked his ball over the fence or something like that, and somebody threw somebody's hat.
Well,
and
I believe it went. Jimmy told Bruce, "I'm Jimmy," and when Bruce had told him to get over on the other side, and then
so
Bruce
took
his ball and punted it.
So he was apparently, and again, I remember seeing like the aftermath of it. I was out there, but everyone kind of has their own area to warm up, especially on our field.
Right.
And like every time I go out there, I warm up in the same corner. Not that it really matters, but so apparently Jimmy was in the D-line / Bruce's area, and they told him to get out, but I don't think it was very nicely.
No, it was, yeah.
And then
thank you for editing yourself.
Like you said, I think the ball was taken and punted, and then someone's beanie was ripped off, another person's head thrown. But
well, and then he referred to himself in the third person or something like that. He said, "This is Jimmy's area," and then so. But then when you get to know him and you read about him and everything, I feel bad now for not liking him.
2 hours before a playoff game, everyone's at a different kind of state of mind than what they normally are.
That's a good point.
We should actually get the pregame show from that and listen to what Dave said about Jimmy Graham.
I take it all back.
It was
now.
bad.
Take it all back.
Now you're all friends, but when they decided to trade for him, what were your thoughts on it? Because look, you became the man last year at tight end, especially against Carolina, the winning touchdown there in the final minute, and really how you've progressed. But what were your thoughts when that actually came down?
So originally, my first thought was, you spend so much time with your individual position. I was like, obviously having a big name guy like Jimmy, I was worried, that he'd be tough to deal with, because he's already established in the league. So that was my worry, like, hey, is this guy going to be a prima donna type dude? Like, what's his attitude like? But and like you said, we had like the little Seahawks versus Jimmy Graham scuffle a couple years ago. But that being said, he's been nothing like that, so it's really been awesome. And for me personally, just being able to pick his brain and how he thinks through routes and what he's looking for as far as coverages and individuals even on film has been like really awesome for me.
What makes him a good player? And there's so many things that go into this, but as someone that plays the same position and looks at, he's obviously been in an offense that throws the ball a ton more, but when you look at him, what makes him stand out?
I think physically, obviously he's extremely large, but just the way he moves and with his body type, I've never seen anybody at, again, 6'7", 265 or whatever he does weigh, get in and out of breaks and run as fluid as he does. And that's kind of, I think, just pretty neat. He's got great hands, again, an extremely hard worker, like I've been saying, but it's pretty neat to see a guy at that size move like he's a 5'9", 190 guy.
You know who's a good tight end and really fast? You are.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
This guy right here.
That guy. Yeah, so, I was thinking about, Paul mentioned your touchdown against Carolina. You're one of those guys that I kind of have to run back on TiVo and go, how did he do that? Because, and your speed it's very deceptive. Same thing in the Arizona game, but most of the Carolina game, you catch it kind of in a zone between two defenders and then just ran away from everybody. And I remember in the very beginning, Darrell Bevel said, this guy doesn't know how fast he is. But now, you know how fast you are.
Yeah, you know what? And it was cool because last year when I had the first touchdown against Arizona, I got to get out and run a little bit, and that was kind of fun. And everyone, even some of the new guys on the sideline were like, dude, I didn't know you were that fast. I'm like, well, as a tight end, you run your routes, but there's not a ton of times where you just get to take off on a 40-yard sprint, straight ahead. So I want to go back home. I'm doing my track and field work, making sure that I still got it. So it's
you were quite the athlete growing up. I mean, AAA hockey. You were Canadian junior baseball team, left-handed power hitter. By the way, who do you think could go deep or hitting a long ball? You or Russell Wilson?
Long ball?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm taking myself.
Not even close, right?
Yeah, long ball.
Average? Russell was a middle infielder. You haven't looked at Russell's minor league stats. I think you might have him on average.
Yeah,
too.
Really?
Yeah.
You might even be able to play 30? Second base over him too.
We're talking Mendoza line, right?
Oh no, I'm teasing. But quite the athlete. And so when I look at this team, if you go back 6 years ago, this was a two-back, two wide receiver offense. Now, what does it evolve to? I mean, it becomes. We got a little bit of the spread last year, but is this 50% two tight end offense now?
That's a great question. You got me with this one.
Answer honestly. Bevel's not listening.
That's right. Part of it I think will depend on the defense we play, and also we have so many weapons that, like you said, we can. The kind of neat thing about our offense is we are very diverse, where it's like, hey, we come out, we got two tight ends, we can do two tight ends or two backs, next thing you know, you got, and really you can use both tight ends as receivers, and you could go 5 wide with two tight ends, so I think that there's a variety of formations and just different lineups that we'll really be able to utilize this year. But as far as putting a percentage on it, we'll have to see, because right now it's tough to tell, until we kind of get into a flow of things.
Luke, you answered that question. I'm not telling you that. That's how you answer that
I think he wanted to tell me. I really do. He just knew he was on radio, and he said, I'm going to give you the best I can give you.
Team show. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to give that away.
Oh, don't worry.
It's true. It's Seahawks Weekly here. We do want to say thank you to our sponsors. Brought to you by Bud Light, by Legendary Donuts. We've got awesome Heritage Donuts. Distilling, their naturally flavored vodkas. Sparkling Ice also here. We're really excited about this year. Michael's Toyota of Bellevue. We're going to be here each Thursday night. We're with Luke Willson. And I didn't know this about you, but you were a philosophy major.
I am. First off, donuts and alcohol? What kind of show is this?
Well, it's the
Your
alcohol
kind of show, Luke.
Donuts,
You're Canadian.
Yeah, it's Canadian.
Are you kidding
We're going to get into
it. We have Bud Light.
You called me out.
Are you okay with Bud Light?
Yeah, you called me out on that.
We're going to get into Tim Hortons in here before long.
Touche. That's good.
You were a philosophy major.
I was.
There have got to be easier majors to have.
Yeah. There was, you know what? I enjoyed it, though. I know it sounds, it was cool because everyone was like, man, I enjoyed writing the papers. We didn't have the crazy exams that a lot of, the research papers that got into some deep chats.
What drew you to it? Why did you end up being a philosophy major?
So originally I was kind of thinking political science, psychology, and to be honest, the more classes I took in those two fields, the more and more I wanted to get away from both of them. And then that summer I ended up taking you're playing football, you got to be in summer school, but just as an elective, I took a philosophy 101 class, and it was me and 3 or 4 football guys. And the guy went through a book by Plato, not one of his more popular books. It's called The Sophist. And I thought it was the way he explained it, I thought it was this is going to get a little weird, but I just thought it was extremely neat and articulated, one of the coolest things I've ever read. So then, I started taking a few more classes, and I kind of got into it and started ripping up these 10-page papers on whether you should. I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. Well, but it's there's some deep chats.
Yeah, you are deep, but it sounds like with philosophy, though, there's a lot of BSing. Am I right?
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so you can just say, well, the teacher can't really say whether you're right or wrong. You said, well, that's my philosophy.
You know what? But you gotta be able to back it up. Okay. So that's when the BSing comes. You put the philosophy out there, but the BSing comes after that.
It's all how you frame it.
Yeah.
So, you ended up at Rice. Talk about playing football in Canada. To me, I was actually researching some things because one of my sons who played football last year, one of his teammates is playing in Canadian football, and I was shocked how little they make. I mean, it's about 60 to 80,000.
CFL is not a great gig.
But why doesn't it? Why don't they expand it and let more Americans play? Why don't they put it on some border, cities along the way? And you growing up, I mean, was Canadian football big?
Big. I don't know if I'd describe it as big. It's gotten bigger, and even today, someone told me stats the other day. The NFL is much bigger than CFL, even in Canada. Now, that's Canada as a whole. Like if you go to Saskatchewan, those people live and die by the Rough Riders out there. All right, that's like the kind of more of a rural area, and it's a huge gig for them. But once you get into some of the bigger cities, it's a lot NFL driven. The thing about the CFL though is, although they're not as highly paid, they're like CBA or whatever they call it up there. I'm assuming it's the same thing. They're like out of there by 1 o'clock, and it's only 6 months a year.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys will go up there, and they'll make, like you said, 60, 80 grand, and then they'll get a part-time job the other half of the year.
So that was never the dream for you.
You know what? It was one of those things where I think that the dream for me was to go to college in America and play D1 ball, because there's a pretty big drop-off between Division I NCAA and CIS, which is the Canadian football. Even in the CIS, there's only one division, and there's a huge drop-off from the first-place team to the last-place team, like a very large. So it's kind of developing, but not where it needs to be.
How did you get that dream? And I ask that because in America, I won't say it's normal for people to aspire to be D1 football players, but it's a little more. The hockey's the most popular sport in Canada.
Oh, for sure.
And then you were a baseball player. Where did the dream to play D1 college football come from?
To be honest, so I was playing a ton of hockey and playing a little bit of baseball, and my two older brothers were big football guys, and they were heavily recruited amongst colleges in Canada. And we went from there, and they were like, hey, you want to come to this camp? And I'm like, sure. And I went to this camp up there, and Rice was there, and 3 weeks later, you send down some game film, and then all of a sudden, I'll never forget, I got a call on the phone from the recruiting guy, and it's like, we're offering you a full ride athletic scholarship. And I'm like, what? And all of a sudden, from there, I started to obviously take it more serious and kind of look into it, and now I'm here.
So was that because you ran fast? And I asked that because, you obviously, some sort of metric, something you did there, tripped every radar they had.
I've always been able to move pretty well for my size, and as much as I love Canada, the state of football in Canada is not the strongest. So, when I'm out there and I went to this camp, and I'm not saying I was great, but maybe everybody else wasn't great, so it really made me stick out a little more. And again, I've been about 6'5" since 9th grade. That also helps.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I was pretty much height-wise fully grown. I was a lot lankier, believe me, and but I was pretty tall and could move around pretty well. So I think that's kind of what did it.
I remember the final day of my freshman year, and this will surprise no one. The gym teacher measured me at 4'11" and a half.
Oh no! So,
yeah.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
They gave you the half. Huh?
No. She wouldn't give me the half. That was the issue.
You were
Mrs.
4'11".
Houston, and I hope she's miserable right now.
I can't get an even 5.
Yeah, give me 5 feet, and you're 6'5".
Yeah.
That seems so unfair.
I'll be honest. I didn't play much basketball because it went with hawk season, but I led the league in offensive rebounds, all for my own misses. But I would just pick them all up and shoot them back until one got in.
Wait, and so you played hockey?
Yeah, a lot of hockey.
Were you a goon?
Somewhat.
Well, you have two older twin brothers, right?
Yeah.
They kind of prepare you for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Have you talked to Nowak? Because Nowak was kind of a goon.
Oh, so we have these discussions, and he thinks that because he grew up in Wisconsin playing AAA that he's a better hockey player than me.
That's ridiculous.
That is absolutely ridiculous. And
the Canadian wins every time on
every time. I said, listen, you could bring your Wisconsin All-Star team and play a mid-level team in my hometown, and we would wipe the floor with you.
I got to say this. In most locker rooms...
This guy had the audacity to tell me this.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I want to give people here an idea, because in most NFL locker rooms, it's not like the Seahawks locker room, because you have to imagine that on one corner there's a ping pong table where right now Tavares Jackson is the reigning champion, I believe.
Said who?
Oh, he's going to take him too.
There we go again. Yeah.
So we have that. We have the ping pong table here. Then we have Nowak and Luke Willson arguing over whose hometown played better hockey, and Justin Britt and J.R. Sweezy getting ready to wrestle because they were both state champion heavyweight wrestlers.
You should see, last year me and Moyaki had some intense games of Trivia Crack. You know the ad on your phone?
Yeah.
I stopped playing, but back then it got pretty heated.
So you're just competitive all the way around. There's
$10 a game.
You know what's funny is you look at these guys, some of these arguments that they have too, there's no way to ever win the argument. Yet it doesn't stop them from happening, right?
Yeah. No, so, to be honest, I don't argue a lot in our locker room because, like you said, there's really no point to arguing. That's why we play the games.
I got to imagine though that your philosophy background comes into play pretty well at that point. You could probably dazzle.
I don't know how well it's understood or received though.
See,
I got to know though, Britt or Sweezy, who you taking?
Sweezy.
Yeah.
You know what? And that's no disrespect to Britt. I mean, but Sweezy kind of has that like wild man switch where it's almost like he's on the verge of being unstable. And I mean that in the most positive way. I mean that in the most positive way.
I got you.
Have you seen in the preseason, they have the mug shots?
Yes.
Did you see the expression on Sweezy's face?
I've seen it. So when we come out of the tunnel,
it looks like Charles Manson.
Have you ever noticed like the pregame stuff at CenturyLink? When we come out of the tunnel, they'll like put the camera in your face and you run out. And when the camera's in his face, I don't know what's going through his mind.
He's a defensive lineman. It explains a lot.
All I'm saying is I do not want to be playing defensive tackle and have 60 minutes of J.R. Sweezy in front of me.
It's really funny because I've asked just about everybody, Sweezy, is it Sweezy or is it Britt? Because Britt's a really accomplished high school wrestler, and everybody answers Sweezy. So I guess that must be the answer.
You know what? I could see Britt being like real technical, and I'm not a wrestler, so I don't know. This is like, I am not a good source to be asking, but I just think that Sweezy will do something like of just raw power that everyone will jaw-dropping stuff. And
what's the worst thing you've seen him do to somebody on the field? And I'm not asking like dirty or like what's the thing when you've watched back? Because Sweezy is a guy that's developing this litany of stories. Yeah. What's the most sort of amazing thing you've seen him do?
Amazing or like funny?
Funny, anything. Thing that you're like, look at, and you're like, oh my gosh.
So last year in preseason, we were playing the Chargers. And it was like the second or third play. It might have been the first play of the game. I don't know. But we ran a little like wide receiver screen. And this year when we were playing the Chargers, we watched it a bunch of times. That's why it's fresh in my mind. But he goes out. The screen didn't go as far as we wanted. We might have got 5 or 6. But he's on just a dead sprint up to the high safety. And he doesn't know like it's going on behind him. And it was Eric Weddle, who's an established guy in the league. And he's kind of like, hey, play's over. It's game 2 or 3 of the preseason. And Sweezy cut him. And it looked like he got shot out of a cannon, like just sprinting up. Probably gets a 10-yard sprint and just goes, boom! It blows him up. And Weddle was like, oh my God, dude, what are you doing? Like, you could see he was shocked that it even happened. And like, but that's kind of his mindset. There's no preseason. There's, here's the play. This is what my job is. And it's really cool. He's offensively, he's a big part of our offense.
Best compliment I could give him is that I would hate to play against him because
I think anybody would.
He looks nasty. Hey, you and me and the guy in the green hat right there, that's Mikey. We have something in common. We all went fishing this year up at Haida Gwaii with West Coast Resorts up there.
Yeah.
Now, I heard up there that they played a prank on you.
Oh, God. Come on.
Can you tell us about
bring this up?
I think we need to hear it.
Okay. Yes, I am.
So, the first day, Jim Zorn was up there, and Jim Zorn's son is just fishing off the dock at night. And everyone's like, what is he doing? And he hooks like a 200-pound halibut. Now, you're only allowed to bring up a 75-pounder or whatever. So they got the GoPro down there, they're watching it. Long story short, next night there's 30 people out there on the dock. And so I think it was my last night, and I'd maxed out all the fish that you were legally allowed to take. I was like, the only thing I didn't get is just halibut. And the halibut are bottom feeders, so I wasn't really trying. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out there. So I'm sitting on the dock, and I got my rod up there and just chilling. And I'm like, man, I feel like something's biting my rod. Like I could kind of feel like it getting knocked around, a little bait on the end. I'm like, I think I got it. And there's like 6 or 7 of us out there, so it's like, who's going to be the lucky one who snags the halibut, And all of a sudden, like I get a little pull. I'm like, hey, should I pull? I'm freaking out. I'm not a fisherman. I'm like, dude, it's here. Like I got it. I had a big pull, like, so I yanked the rod like as hard as I can, and I'm like all fired up, like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. And I come up, one of the guides had put on scuba gear, jumped in the water, found my rod, and started pulling on himself. So I was like pulling on it, and a human being is coming up from the water. And I'm like, oh my, you can't.
So you missed an opportunity. You get
Yes,
the club at that point.
I was so.
Did you release it?
That's about it. You want to talk about going from being all excited to a bit of a letdown.
Humiliated a little bit.
Yes,
right?
and plus it's embarrassing. I was
but
the guy who fell
you're a
for
good
it.
sport, though,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
It
You
was
got up
funny.
here and you'll talk to us. So I do want to say thank you. I want everybody here to give Luke Willson a huge hand. It's Pro Bar and Dining, Seahawks Weekly. Luke, it's been great to get to know you. We really look forward to kind of watching you throughout this season, and thank you very much.
Hey, appreciate you guys having me.
We've got